Today we've got several RV projects to share with you, everything from slide trays to water intrusion. I also have a fix for our unreachable reading lights, so let's get into it. If you've watched us for a while, you're probably familiar with this new Momentum 410 that we've moved into, and the fact that I've got a ton of projects to do. Just like the last time, if you watched our 7 projects video where we did our first 7 projects on this RV, these are kind of random, unrelated projects that I want to share. So in case you're only interested in 1 or 2 or whatever one you want to see, we're going to have chapter markers in the timeline down below. We'll also have chapter links in the description down below, so you can just click those and jump right to the section you might be interested in. Per usual, this is a how we did it video, not a how to video. I'm going to show you some things and how we did them, and if you choose to implement them, that's up to you. We just ask that you be comfortable with the type of work that you're doing, particularly if it's electrical. None of the ones in this video are that complex, but we still want you to be comfortable before you do any of these mods yourself. Also, per usual, with this type of video, sometimes we discover things after the video has been published. It could be something I got wrong, it could be something new. Whenever that type of situation arises, we always put that in a pinned comment on YouTube. We'll also put it in the description on YouTube, and we'll also put it in a nice big yellow block on our blog. So if you're going to take on one of these projects, always check down below just in case there have been some updates since we published the video. Let's just jump into the first one, which is our flying insects screens. Now there's a little bit of controversy online about these. Some people will say that, oh, if you put screens on your furnace or your water heater, you're going to void your warranty. And I'm going to read directly from the manual here. Do not restrict the flow of combustion air or the warm air circulation to the furnace by covering the exterior vent. That, of course, is for the furnace. And I spoke to Suburban a few weeks ago when we did the water heater thermostat fix, and their basic line is they're not looking to deny warranty claims. They would essentially have to prove that that particular device restricted airflow and caused the problem. And quite honestly, if you look at these screens, you can kind of visually tell they're really not going to restrict flow, particularly on the combustion chamber for the furnace. There's not a whole lot of airflow going through there, but you do not want to restrict it. So in the same way you might inspect those orifices for mud daubers and things like that, you want to make sure these screens are always free and clear. We had these screens on our last RV for 5 years, never had an issue with them, so we wanted to put them on this new RV. And as far as the screens that are on the water heater, those are all just passive vents. There is no fan or anything in those. It's just for that little heat sink that's behind the water heater, kind of let heat out there. But again, those holes are big enough for insects to get in there and build nests, and we don't want that. Next up are the MORryde slide trays. I should say slide tray because we're only putting 1 in it this time. But if you've watched us for any length of time, you know that we love the slide trays in our basement. It makes it so easy to get to things in the middle of that basement or way in the back. You just slide it out and get to it. Now, MORryde installed our slide trays for us when we got the independent suspension installed on the 397. For this one, we just had them ship it to us. Full disclosure, they did give us this slide tray for free to try out and share with you guys, so thank you to MORryde. Before you order a slide tray, obviously measurements are paramount. Measure 3 times, make sure you've got the right width, depth, all of that good stuff before you order it. But there are several sizes available, so you should be able to find something that fits your needs. These slide trays are super easy to install. They come pre-assembled because I don't know how you would ship this thing and have somebody assemble it. This isn't an IKEA piece. This is a big, nice, solid slide. But you might want to have somebody to help you lift it in and out, particularly if it's the super long one like we have. Luckily, I had Phil from Today is Someday staying here on our property with us, so he was right next door, able to help me get this thing in and out. Now, depending on the distance between the floor of your basement and the top of your opening, your door opening, because obviously it has to clear that, you may or may not need a riser kit. We just barely needed one, so I went ahead and got one. Now, these riser kits are nice. I believe they give you about 4 different levels of rise between 1.6 inch and I think up to 3.5 inch. We were able to get away with the lowest setting, which is about 1.5 inches. I found it easiest to get the slide tray out of the slide Take that out, take the bottom slide piece out and get it out, turn it upside down to put these things on. You could probably use little sections of 2x4, or maybe you run the whole 2x4 along the width, depending on how much space you need. That's certainly an option. I believe this kit is just a little over $100. The thing you don't want to do is you don't want to reduce the size of that footprint by using something like spacers or a stack of washers, because that's going to have all that weight from that slide tray sitting on a very small footprint and it could damage your floor. So we decided to go ahead and just use this riser kit. It was super easy to install, just taking the time, putting the bolts on. Once I did that, I got Phil to help me put it back in the RV. We put the slide tray in, and from that point, it's just a matter of screwing it into the floor. I just used 1-inch wood screws, has a nice good bite, it's nice and solid. Just like in our last RV, that slide tray is the same size. So I was able to put our little workbench thing with the collapsible legs that go inside it in that tray, which sets it up high enough that I put our Blackstone on it. That setup has been awesome. Now you might remember in the last RV, we had a slide tray aft also. That was a one-side tray. It didn't go out both sides like that front tray does. And I may do that. I just need to wait and see how much basement space I need for some other projects. We're going to be putting in some power management stuff down there that I need space for, also a water filter system. So I'm waiting until I get those in and I can kind of reshape that wall to see whether or not a slide tray really makes sense on that side. So we'll have that in the future depending on what we do there. Next on the list is GasStop. Now we've covered this before in a video, I think, about propane safety and things like that. And I'm admittedly a bit late installing these. Our last set of GasStops went with our 397 when it was sold on consignment. And we just got these in and I wanted to get them on. Installation of the GasStop it's super simple. You unscrew your propane connection, you put it on, screw it on, and put the other one on top. Not a big deal, not something I really need to cover in a how-to video. But I wanted to reiterate why these things are desirable, why they might be necessary in your mind. They are in ours. Because you might think propane tanks have a safety thing, right? You know, if it's open, it doesn't just open, it's got the thing called an EFV or excess flow valve. And that's true, but what you might not know is that excess flow valve does not shut off your flow completely. I did a test on this a while back and I took this opportunity to do another test.
Okay, you'll hear it go. But you can hear it does not shut it off.
And you can definitely hear the difference between the excess flow valve, because you can still hear flow, and the GasStop, which shuts it off completely. When we first started RVing, we didn't have an inverter or any of that cool stuff to run the refrigerator and all that off of battery power. And we would run with our propane fridge on. Now, once we got an inverter installed, we shut off our gas when we travel. So that eliminates one potential risk that the GasStop kind of helps, is if you're driving down the road and you blow a tire and it flies up under a slide, maybe hits propane lines for your fridge or whatever, stove, whatever you've got on the slide. Now, that's definitely one huge benefit for the GasStop, because these things are designed to stop like a cut line. If you go from no flow to open, this thing will shut it off completely. Now, that's one potential risk, the whole tire hitting your gas lines. But what if you had maybe like a little small fire or something hot next to your propane lines that melts through them? Now you've got a small fire with a source of propane that's going to turn into a big fire. Now, I don't want to scare you. I think these things are kind of rare, but for the price of these GasStops, it's just a little bit of peace of mind that you can put on there and at least know you've got one more layer of protection. Now, in the past, some people have noticed a problem with the GasStops when it comes to things like a propane generator that's going to draw a lot of propane. It was triggering some of the GasStops to shut off. And of course, it's going to shut off your generator. And from what I understand, this newer batch, this newer version does not have that problem. I can't confirm that because we don't have a propane generator. But if you do and you test one of these out and have trouble, please let us know. In addition to the GasStop device itself, the company that makes those also now makes these braided 90-degree hoses. In a lot of your compartments for these propane tanks, when you put the GasStop on it, it sticks it out far enough that a line coming straight in might be hit by like a cover going over it if you have a travel trailer, or the side of the container up there if you've got a fifth wheel. And these are a great solution for that. So I went to install these. Obviously I didn't, sitting here in my hand. For us, this fitting was just a little bit too small. And Techno RV, who sells these, does make an adapter for that. We just haven't got it in yet. Once I do, I'll put these in just because I like the braided hose and I liked the 90. It makes it a little bit easier to connect, even though we don't really have a huge problem with that. But some of you might, and this is a great solution. Just be sure to measure and look at the type of valve. I think they're technically both 1/4 inch, but one of them is like an inverted flare and the other one's an NPT. Bottom line is this was too small and the other one's bigger. I think maybe one of them is a 1/4 inch measurement on the outside and the other one is a 1/4 inch measurement on the inside. I don't know. But call Techno RV. They have great support. Next up is a fix for the jack popping. Now, if you don't know what jack pops are, don't worry about it. Skip to the next project. But for a lot of these fifth wheels with the Lippert hydraulic system, the 6-point hydraulic system, we have a thing that I just call a jack pop. And what it is you'll be sitting in the RV, typically at night, because you're in the front of the RV in the bedroom. You'll move around and it'll go pop. And it'll sometimes settle a little bit, sometimes it won't, but either way, it makes a noise. And it has to do with those hydraulic seals or something on the front jacks. And I think it also happens on some of the other jacks too. But Lippert does have a published solution for this and a whole process. I'll put that on the screen. The bottom line is there are 3 anti-stiction fluids that Lippert recommends. And the very first time we did this on our old 397, we used the cat fluid. It worked great. Stopped it immediately. And about a year later, I don't know if this stuff wears out or how this anti-stiction fluid works, but the pops started coming back. And we didn't have a cat dealership around, so we found the fork oil, which is the second option on those 3 options. And we tried that, and it just didn't work as good. So the next time we were near a cat dealership, because that's the only place I've found to buy this stuff, there might be some other place online, but it's not on Amazon. So we found some cat fluid, put that in, and it works. So we definitely recommend the cat fluid. We do not recommend the fork oil. I think it's Maximo fork oil. The other item on that list, which is I think Torco or something like that. We haven't tried that. I have no idea if that works well or not. And this process is not difficult, but it can be a bit of a pain, particularly in a fifth wheel, because you can't just put all the jacks up because the nose is going to go down to the ground, and you don't want to do that and have your RV sitting like this. So I had to get on the hitch first so I could pull all the jacks up. And that's step 1 in this process, is getting all of the jacks up, which pulls all the hydraulic fluid back into the reservoir so you can see what your starting point is. Typically, you're going to be pretty close to that fill line, which means you're going to have to take some fluid out before you put the anti-stiction fluid in. So you need some sort of container that'll hold about a quart of that fluid, something that you can go dispose of and recycle responsibly, like an auto center or something like that, and it's some sort of siphon device. The other part of this process, after you get the hydraulic fluid out and get the anti-stiction fluid in, is to get it to kind of mix up, right? It's got to mix in there. But you want to be able to run your jacks up and down a couple of times, get that fluid through there. And when we did this the first time, it was pretty immediate. But I imagine it will take time for entropy to do its work and disperse all of that anti-stiction fluid through your hydraulic fluid and be fully effective. So if you don't get a result right away, run your jack some more and see if that improves. But so far, we're good to go here. Now, I've saved the best for last because these last 2 projects were absolute thorns in our side that we can finally remove. First up are our unreachable reading lights. If you watched our 410, I think updates and problems, I forget which video we talked about this in. Our reading lights in our old 397 had wall switches right here. So if you needed the reading light over the bed, over the head of the bed, you just clicked it on right here. The new reading lights are a push button in the center of the light. So you've got to reach up and push it. Now that's fine if you can reach up and push it, but these slide boxes are big. So I found this DC wireless wall switch and remote on Amazon, and I figured I would give it a try. And if this thing works, not only would it solve our on-off switch problem, it could also give us dimmer abilities, which is really cool. The install of this was really super simple. The first thing you want to do is to, obviously pull the light down so you can access it. Next up, you want to get some readings on there before you shut off power to make sure 100% you know which is positive and which is negative. You can make some assumptions that the wire markings or colors might tell you, but don't ever do that, especially in the RV industry. Always double check your wiring. So once I did that, I pulled a fuse and I wired it in. Luckily, the wires that connected the light to the RV were a little quick disconnect. I could pull those off really easily. Took that over to a little workstation, aka our dresser. I just used the wire nuts that were supplied with the device. They do give you 4, so you can wire this whole thing just by stripping wires and using these wire nuts. And then I just took the whole thing over and plugged the wires from the device into the quick disconnects, clipped them in, turned it on.
Let's see if it works. On, off, and let's see if the dimmer works. Oh, nice.
Bingo, worked like a champ. I was so excited. I knew Tara was going to be excited.
I'm so excited!
So I wired up her side, and then I just used some 3M two-sided adhesive tape to basically put them up underneath our nightstands, because they're not the prettiest switches. They don't really match the decor of the RV. But that way, you're laying there, click, and it's on. Love it. Perfect. These things are like 25 bucks on Amazon, and it's a perfect fix for this situation. And honestly, you could use this in a lot of DC LED applications. You could wire them in here. You could do them pretty much anywhere. The next project is also light related and also was kind of a huge pain, thorn in our sides that we had to fix, is our lighting on the outside situation. Now, we like to run our underbelly lights at night. We consider a pest deterrent, theft deterrent, whatever. We like to have those lights on underneath. They're not obnoxious. They're not going to be shining into other people's windows or anything like that. But the front cap lights, if you've ever seen those or are familiar with those, they're on a lot of fifth wheels these days, and they basically run down that front cap. They're really cool looking. They can do flashes and colors and do all kinds of cool stuff. And that's okay in some situations. I'm not sure which, but if you're in perhaps a rally and it's like a parade going around or whatever it is, there might be a situation where those are kind of cool to leave on. We find them to be a little bit obnoxious to be left on all night. And I realize some people do that, and to each their own. Luckily, we have blackout shades. We don't really worry about it. But some people do. And we don't want to have our front cap lights on all night, every night. So we needed a way to separate those. I didn't get to the meat of the point here is our bottom lights and those front lights are tied into one circuit. So we were not able to turn on our belly lights and turn off the front cap lights. So this one took a little bit of detective work and investigation to figure out how I was going to make a switch to turn those off. These lights, this light circuit is controlled by our LCI1 control. So the first step was to go in there and get the actual name of the light, which was lower accent light. Even though it controls the lower accent light and the front lights, that's what it was called. From there, I had to get into the protected settings of the LCI1 control. And I found online, I think one of the things I read said if you tap the LCI logo 5 times or something, it pops up a thing. I didn't have that, so I just tapped the little the voltage setting, the voltage indicator 5 times, and lo and behold, up pops the warning. I just said yes, I want to go in there. It took a little while, so if you see your screen like populating and moving and doing stuff, give it a good 2 or 3 minutes for that to settle. But once it settled, I was able to go find that lower accent light, and I saw that it was connected to a port on there called RGB2. So armed with that, I went down into the basement to the main LCI control box. I'm sure it has a better name than that, but whatever. It's got all the wires coming out of it going to lights and tanks and all kinds of stuff for all the stuff that the LCI1 control controls. And I was able to look around the edge of that board, and then I found RGB1 and RGB2. Bingo, I have found it this far. So I followed those 4 wires. If you're not familiar, RGB just stands for red, green, and blue. Those are the 3 colors that make up the color spectrum. 3 wires plus a neutral, so it's a 4-wire set. If you're lucky, your red, green, and blue wires are red, green, and blue, which makes it easy to find your neutral wire. And I'll get to that in a minute. But I found that those 4 wires led to a crimping that went to 2 sets of wires, which is what I expected. Now I just have to figure out which of those 2 sets of wires feeds the front cap and which feeds the ones down below. So I wasn't able to determine just by following the wires which way they went. So I got to thinking, okay, how can I differentiate these 2 circuits? And I thought, okay, the front cap is just essentially 2 strips of LEDs, whereas the underbelly is at least 4, maybe 6 segments down there. So I figured they had to be drawing more current. So what I did was I set the lights to white, because you can change the colors. And if you're familiar with RGB, white is basically all 3 of those on. So that should give me the maximum current on the neutral. I took my little fluke meter here and I measured out the current on the neutral for both sets of lines, found that one of them was much higher than the other, and deduced that the lower one must be my front cap lights.
My guess is this one is the front cap light.
And I cut my neutral wire and the front cap lights went out. Perfect. So now I know that's where I've got to wire in my switch. I just found a real simple single pole, single throw switch. For those of you who don't know, it's basically an on-off switch. It's either connected or it's not. And it's got 2 wires coming out of it. It either passes current or it doesn't. So all I have to do is wire that in series with my neutral to turn those lights on and off. So I wired that together, wired it in series, tested my switch, worked great. I decided to mount it down in the basement right behind where that is. We have a little Rockford Fosgate panel that has a little head unit and amplifier and stuff on it, just to, I guess, kind of look kind of fancy. But there was room on there to basically drill a hole and put the switch there, put the panel back on, and bingo, I have an on-off switch for our cap light. Now, you might think, hey, Chad, why don't you use that same switch you used on your overhead reading lights on that? And I certainly could do that, but that switch is going to be in the OFF position pretty much forever. Unless there's some kind of special circumstance where we want our front cap lights on, I can go flick it on. Our next project video is going to be Internet 4.0. I'm already in the middle of that, as you might see from all these PepWave boxes here. So be sure to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss it when that one comes out. We'll see you next time.